I will bring this meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order on May 1st, although it feels like December 1st. It's kind of cold out there. I do want to start with a moment of silence for a former Board of Selectmen's mom passed away yesterday or today, and that's Carol Hardwick, and so I'd like to recognize her. She's been a longstanding member of our community for a very long time, and certainly Mary served for many years on the board in the town. So a moment of silence for Carol Hardwick. Okay, thank you. I don't have any other points to bring up in terms of a chairman's report. We're a little off on our schedule because we're meeting tonight because we need to take care of some executive session minutes, and we will meet again on Monday, May 20th will be our next meeting. So with that, we're going to start, and just note that if anybody has any information they're recording or silence cell phones, do all that, please.
I just had one little question. I've written, I think, 3 letters to the board.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any kind of a format where at least there's an acknowledgement it was received, we're working on it, or whatever? Because I was on vacation for 2 weeks, and George Smith submitted
Yep.
letters.
Yep.
But it didn't show that you have received them. And I did check with you
Sonia.
today that
Mhm.
they did get delivered, but there was no acknowledgement of the other ones either, that, yeah, we got them and we're working on it, or
So,
something. Just,
yeah, they're usually listed in the correspondence or consent agenda. Correspondence, we usually list our letters in there on our agenda if we've received them. And Greg, do you know if Mr.
If they were
Coyne's
handed at the meeting, they'd be listed as part of the
listed
minutes.
as part of the
Right.
minutes?
I remember 2.
Two.
I know 2 for sure that were in there. I'm not sure about the 3rd.
well, the 3rd would have been recent on the 16th.
Right.
Okay, I'll
Did
see.
you get that?
So
Well,
those are still being,
Huh?
I believe she does, we just need to we haven't formalized those minutes.
Minutes yet, so they're not, may not be reflected in those minutes just yet. Is this regarding the complete streets?
Yeah, that was
Yes.
the accident in Lexington, the fellow got killed and so forth. Did you get those?
Though,
It was a 2-page letter about the SUP, and the one in Lexington where it was a head-on collision. It was in the Sunday Globe,
okay,
but you folks never got it.
I don't know.
No,
We
Yeah,
did.
no, we did.
Yeah, I
At
don't
the
remember.
meeting.
correct.
They were
Yes.
given to us at the meeting, Bob,
Okay,
All right,
yeah.
so that they'd be reflected, to Greg's point, in the minutes of that meeting, which are still being formalized.
Yeah.
That letter would be listed as being received by the board.
right. Okay,
So everybody got it?
yeah, I don't,
If it was
You
at the
didn't
last,
get it?
if it was at the last meeting, then yes, we got it.
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
okay. So we'll take a double look, though, and make sure, and if there's anything we can respond to you directly, we will. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. Okay, any other public comment before we get started? Okay, thanks. Okay, the first thing is the Harbor Advisory Committee recommendations. Number 1, Bion, are you leading us through those?
I think I am.
Great.
So I think we all know that we had 2 meetings addressing this back in December and January, or January and February. It was some combination of that. And at the subsequent Harbor Advisory Committee last month, there were 3 recommendations that the committee wanted to bring forward to the selectmen. And the first was that at this time there should be no restriction of anchoring. That was one of the bigger points discussed, and that the Conservation Commission is working on whether or not there should be regulations for land under sea, including eelgrass, and any restriction to anchoring, if it were to come, would in all likelihood come from them.
Okay.
The second is to extend the no-wake zone across the entire mouth of the harbor. Right now, we have a no-wake zone in our channel adjacent to our area southern mooring field. may not make a wake within 150 feet of a mooring field, so from the channel, from the mooring field south towards the Ram Islands, 150 feet is a no-wake zone. But in keeping with every other harbor with a lot of moorings and a lot of boating activity, the Harbor Advisory Committee believes that the mooring no-wake zone should extend from the Ram Islands, the south part of the mouth of the harbor, all the way across the western end of our Area 7 mooring field to West Manchester or Harbor Street. That would be a fairly significant change.
Mhm.
And then lastly,
Harbor Street or Boardman Avenue?
Boardman Ave, sorry. I apologize, it is Boardman Ave. I make that mistake all the time. And assign a police
That's why you should
officer.
move here, Brian.
The grandkids. Assign a police officer to the harbor master while patrolling Sand Dollar Cove on good weather weekend days. So I think action's been taken on that already. So those are the recommendations that the Harbor Advisory Committee has at this time regarding activity at Long Beach Sand Dollar Cove.
Okay. Any comments, questions?
Just one question. Your thoughts on how you'll observe the processes and these added pieces into the summer boating season? And
Sure.
like, will you be keeping a log or just, because I think it's going to be important to
Right,
talk about it again in
right. So,
after Labor Day to get
exactly.
feedback on what happened.
Yeah, I suspect that the new boat that will be patrolling out there will have one of my assistants or deputies on it, and one of their jobs is going to be to document the number of interactions
Yep.
that require some level of enforcement education, and starting at the beginning of the season. So we can see just how many times we do have to interact and what level that rises to.
And also if there's a way, and I know probably some weekends it may be pretty difficult, but to just get some form of a count out there so we can kind of see if
Yeah.
there's trends
That's
too.
not-
Obviously, it's good weather is the
Right.
trend, but,
That won't be a difficulty, and that's will be an absolute key
okay.
component of the record keeping for out there.
Any other comments, thoughts?
I guess, so what is the enforcement plan for offenders beyond the education period?
Right.
So the police department has indicated that they would like to continue with education first, and then presence. It'll be a greater presence with this new boat out there, and then through their log keeping and the deputies' log keeping, maybe start writing tickets for offenders who are going to, the largest, the greatest offenses we're going to find are the no-wake, safety equipment, and overloading of vessels. So there'll be safety violations, that's my prediction. So the majority of the enforcement would be, in all likelihood, the officer that would be staffing that boat. And then if there's enforcement in other areas such as the town docks, that's likely going to be the harbor master on the harbor master patrol boat. Because what this boat in Area 7 is going to allow is the patrol boat to adequately patrol Magnolia, White Beach, Black Beach, Singing Beach, and the inner harbor.
And what is the plan, like, conceptually for presence, especially on the weekends? Like, will there be a boat kind of permanently stationed at the mouth?
Exactly, warm, sunny days where we're expecting the crowds to come. Certainly not weekends like this. I would.
If it's still like this in July,
Right, I know, I'll be looking for a new job. I know. We wouldn't put that patrol boat out there.
right,
But on those sunny weekend days, that boat's main mission is to be in Area 7 on station as education enforcement arm of the harbor and police department.
So on any given weekend, are there 3 boats on the water?
No, so the pump out boat, by the terms of the grant, we were never really supposed to be using that for patrol. That boat is very clear, the federal government, Clean Vessel Act has been very clear, can't use this boat for enforcement. Now, have we used it for that? Yeah, we have. And would we press it into service on the 3rd, 4th of July? Yeah, we probably would. But that boat's main purpose will go back to what the grant specifies it's supposed to be.
So you have 2 boats.
Yes.
So one at the mouth of the harbor,
Yes.
and the other one patrolling in the inner harbor, or?
Magnolia to the inner harbor.
So I guess the question I have, and we just came up, I think the last meeting is, so you see me like out there every Saturday and Sunday
Right.
for most of the day, so I am a Sand Dollar Cove participant. But I think as I step back into my role with the selectmen in the town, I am curious about what is, it doesn't seem like this recommendation really addresses Kettle Cove in earnest.
So it doesn't address Kettle Cove at all.
Right, which concerns me because the Kettle Cove rate of growth
Yep.
is just, it's actually potentially bigger because it's coming from a smaller base historically. So that growth is actually higher than what I would attribute to Sand Dollar Cove. But regardless,
Right.
on one of the more populated weekends, it's comparable in total volume of boats.
Right, so when we had 300 boats at Sand Dollar Cove on Labor Day, we had 100 at Kettle Cove, Lake Beach. It can't hold as many, the real estate just isn't there, but yes, by density, it's potentially even more crowded. So the dedicated boat, were you gonna say
I
something?
think you're about to say it, so go ahead.
Okay. So having a dedicated boat at Long Beach that is going to handle the brunt of the boat traffic that's coming to and from Manchester Harbor allows us to have the patrol boat, the Eastern, do a better job of managing the rest of Manchester Harbor.
Right. So I guess just to keep it brief, there's 2 things that still are outstanding for me. One is, in the event of an incident, particularly at Kettle Cove, across harbor, fire, police, what is our ability to deal with a situation?
Well, the good news at Kettle Cove is if police or fire need to get out into the harbor, we can land the Eastern on the beach.
Yeah.
That's one of the joys of the Eastern, and one of the reasons I wanted to have an Eastern. Shallow draft vessel, I can stand knee deep in the water and hold the boat, and we can load people and gear on and off that vessel.
But a situation similar to what happened in the harbor last summer,
Right.
if you had 4 people seriously injured, are we prepared in the Kettle Cove area to address that?
Right, so I will say that the topic of the Kettle Cove, initially the idea was to try to discuss and come to some resolution for both at the same time. It became apparent very quickly that Long Beach needed to be a discussion, Kettle Cove a second. I would say Kettle Cove is still an outlier. It's further away. Do we want to have a boat that's dedicated to just there like we do at Long Beach? I don't know.
So I guess this leads to like the next point, which is kind of the ultimate point, which came up last week, which I still feel a little strongly about, is I'm not clear how we deal with this over time. Like, I feel like the recommendations that are made are smart ones. I support them for being implemented this year. The root of the problem, I don't feel like we're addressing. And it's not eelgrass.
No, it
The
isn't.
root of the problem to me is we have a highly variable growth of usage in the town, which is fantastic in many respects. I don't see our ability to scale to correspond to the growth of visitors,
Right.
which we want,
Right.
but it's coming at a rate that exceeds our ability to manage it. And so the question is, how are we going to manage this in the future? So I don't see this recommendation really addressing that.
It doesn't,
If I can jump in a little bit.
yeah, feel free.
So I don't feel these 3 recommendations are enough. And I think we need to keep working on some additional possibilities down the road. I think there may come a day where we have to limit the number. There is a capacity. There is a capacity that will be reached if this keeps going.
Right.
Now, maybe that's self-regulating in terms of people start going elsewhere because they feel it's too crowded, but they may not. And I think we need to at least be pursuing and looking and researching and lining up the possibility of having day-use mornings. And those become perhaps the limiting factor to numbers. We don't have to put a limit now, but I think it behooves us to get the wheels in motion to have that option. So that's one thing I think we should be doing. And I think we need to also be preparing for not this season, but for next season, to have some sort of a day-use sticker program. So that people who don't have a Manchester sticker, because we need that revenue stream in order to ramp up more capacity perhaps. And then and the third piece is I think we can do, at least on a voluntary basis, some educating about the eelgrass and mark off where the eelgrass, the heavier beds are, and request people not to moor there, to drop an anchor there. It has worked effectively in some other communities, and I think it's worth, at least on a voluntary basis, until we have additional regulations or not, but at least for now, we would provide that education and request that people don't drop anchor in the main bed area. So in my mind, those are 3 additional steps that aren't, well, the eelgrass markers can be done this year, but the other 2 are a longer term
Right.
process that we should get in motion sooner rather than later.
Right. And I think to that point, sort of dovetailing off of Muffins, gathering the data this summer, and being very mindful about getting that data for both Kettle and everywhere, just sort of what's going on, so that we actually have some benchmarking numbers that we can look at. And looking at this as, again, a continuation. So we did a post-season review last year.
Yes.
This is sort of a pre-season
Right.
jump in. So I would strongly suggest that we gather that data for the different points that you're looking at, in addition to start planning for what are the strategic steps that we want to take next and what's required of those, so that when you come back in the fall, after the season, we'll have a good sense of what happened this summer and sort of what a plan going forward would be. And that's timely relative to budget season as well. So I would say that's pretty much wraps that piece. Okay, good. Public comment?
Madam Chairman, if I may, the concerned voters group that we met with Ryan actually 3 times, there were disputes whether there's ever been 300 boats there. And so this year, we're going to have a drone up there that will actually be able to document and be able to count the number of boats.
Well, the town's not doing that.
No,
right?
that's an independent
Oh,
group.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And,
So that's in conjunction to whatever
yeah,
Demion's
keeping
doing.
in mind, and again, the growth has been in the last, 5, 6 years, that there's never been an incident of a medical emergency, never been an incident where the police have to be involved. And to me, it's a well-behaved, mature adult crowd there with their families, my family included. And you're talking maybe 10 or 12 days a year.
And I don't think anyone is disputing all
Yeah.
of that, Bob. It's more just a matter of, are we doing what we should be doing to maintain no one getting hurt, no medical emergencies,
Mhm.
no
Yeah.
need for police or anything. That's, no one's disputing that people are out
Right.
having a good time and behaving.
Yeah.
It's just more a matter of how do we continue with the large numbers of folks that are frequenting that area and continue our, no
Well,
one getting hurt.
yeah,
That's
and I,
all.
and I
That's
think
all.
that we have spent, and Byron
Yeah.
ran a lot of information sessions, we've got a lot of data that's been gone through, so I think to Muffin's point, we are just trying to keep making sure that we've got data points going forward so that we can look at this realistically and make good planning,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, Manchester has a reputation of being very strict.
Mhm.
The boat is out there, I sit out on my boat in Area 7 and observe when the boat's here. And he's out there and you hear that clanker going off on a regular basis.
Mhm.
So there's a reputation that Manchester has of being a fussy town.
Well, that's okay.
So it's a well-behaved crowd
Yeah.
that respects the privilege.
Yeah.
I don't think fussy, proactive.
Fussy,
maybe.
proactive. All right.
Getting everybody close.
Okay,
Yes.
I want to, we've got to move on quickly, but I'll take two more comments very quick if they're brief, okay?
A consideration, I think, for safety on the water is what is Manchester's obligation to responding to Misery Island? Because when I was on the water, it's closer for Manchester to respond, but yet it's really Beverly's responsibility. And when our harbor master and staff are involved in a Misery accident, then they're not looking at up the way, you know, towards Magnolia. So it's something to keep in mind.
Okay,
And then second, hail to Greg for mentioning that maybe the eelgrass should have some protection, which would reduce numbers. And 1 acre of eelgrass produces as much oxygen as 40 acres of trees. And I think we should be considering that in the age of global warming. And
Okay.
just wanted to put that on the record.
thank you, okay. Steve?
Steve Yank, Norwood Avenue. On behalf of the Concom, Brian is correct. We have had a subcommittee for several weeks looking at possibility of being more explicit in our regulations, working with Ms. McCaslin and other people. But I just want to alert you that that will be specificity in terms of describing the resources, not in terms of new enforcement. And in particular, we have never tried to enforce anything that's transient. We work with projects that are more or less permanent, whether it's cutting down a tree or building a structure. So those protections would apply mainly to piers and to fixed or floating docks that might have significant impact on the land under
Got it,
ocean and the vegetation.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right,
I do have an upcoming trip with the state head of EPA regarding eelgrass. We're going out to look at Long Beach, which has never really had any serious monitoring done, and Division of Marine Fisheries is as well. We're going to go out with a camera, probably a diver, in the next 2 weeks with the EPA and start trying to get some benchmarks too on the condition and location of eelgrass.
yeah, and I think just as a closing point, we typically know what the hotspots are, and whatever we can do to gather data on those real time and begin to monitor that, that's helpful, so, thank you. All right, anything else from the board on this topic? Thank you, thank the
Thanks,
Harbor
Bio.
Advisory Committee, we appreciate it, thank you. Okay,
So did you want to act on the extended no-wake zone?
oh, do we have to take a vote on that? Oh, yeah, I'll take a motion for the extending the no-wake zone.
I'll make a motion to extend the no-wake zone from Ram Island across the west end of Area 7 mooring field to the shoreline at Boardman Ave.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Oh, do you need the approval for all three, or was it just specific to the no-wake where that's posted?
So I was looking for the no-wake because that's a new
Right.
regulation. There.
Right.
The
Yeah.
patrol is in the budget that you've really already approved. So.
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You're set, thank you very
Have a good
much.
evening.
Thanks,
Okay.
Bio.
All right, town common update, please. Too many things at once, right?
Let's get this going. So the last time we talked about the town common,
Yep.
you had a presentation by our consulting landscape architect who gave a presentation of alternative design. And at that point, you were interested in seeing a revised layout in a 3D sketch.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm here to present this evening.
If the video works.
And we'll wake up hopefully in a minute.
Just a night view?
On my screen.
It was up
It
there,
should show
yeah.
up. Do this to me now.
Is there a cord through?
I never have this problem.
No.
Where is it?
Well, do we want to,
So in your packages, there
Yes.
was a 3D sketch. So the basic design, again, adds more green space, reduces the amount of pathways, creates a fully compliant ADA ramp that has a couple of approaches, one from the two new handicap spaces that are behind the church, and also coming from Central Street, you can access that handicap ramp through the main, off of the main steps.
right,
And then it also makes a connection between the front platform to the police area so that someone who can't navigate those stairs would have that platform access as well.
mhm,
The plan calls for a couple of handfuls of new trees
mhm,
and retains a similar number of trees that are there. And it incorporates the design of the War Memorial as well
mhm.
in the area off to towards, next to Seaside Road,
Mhm.
on that side of the drive. So the three-dimensional sketch gives you a semi-bird's eye view showing the trees fully mature. They won't be that big
Mm.
when
To
they first
start
get put in, though some of the existing trees certainly are. So really, the purpose of tonight's update was to have you take a look at that sketch, see if we're still on the right track, if you have any further comments or suggestions as we keep going forward. If not, we will finalize the plans and get bid specs and get it out on the street to bid. And the goal would be to coordinate the renovation of the town common along with the construction of the War Memorial this fall.
Right. Does the plan, where it stands now, open up any more opportunities for benches for folks, or?
So there are ample opportunities for benches.
Okay,
So
it is going
around
to.
that circle,
It is
that
going
main
to,
circle.
Okay.
He's showing benches in
Just
particular
in the
around the
front.
fountain.
Well, right,
But-
I was assuming those were the existing ones that,
Right.
so as long as it
certainly there
opens
are
up some more.
many more opportunities around
Okay.
that circle.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any other
I
comments?
apologize for the technical glitch.
One of the things that's been mentioned as kind of like theoretic for the future of the town is, you know, potentially someday town offices being somewhere else. And so that would leave a question as to what happens to this building. And this is not obviously in any sort of definitive plan, but theoretically, like if the town was to put its town offices somewhere else, police department somewhere else, what would happen to this building? One outcome that I've heard is that it could be developed for whatever use, private use, retail use, something, right? With this plan, like, what is that? Have we thought about what the future of this building might be, and kind of how this space ties into a future use for this building?
So I'm using the assumption that regardless of the future use, that a common area is desired, and that this common area can serve of public use or private use behind it. I don't think there'd be a lot of differences in the layout, regardless of the future use of this building space. So that was sort of the thinking behind it.
But that was considered at least?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think these changes are pretty modest and in keeping with the character of the town common, and I think they add some needed improvements, specifically on that ramp over by the police
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
side to make it a little safer and easier to navigate, and I like the fact that the police stairs can be connected to the town hall, so
Mhm.
it doesn't seem so much of a less of a disconnected building, and it improves the ADA access, because I don't think that the entrance and downstairs is a great way for
Right.
people in wheelchairs to get into town hall. So I think this is a pretty reasonable, conservative approach.
Sorry, Eli, are you done?
Huh?
Are you done? I didn't mean to cut
I'm
you.
done.
Yeah. Continuing with what Eli was talking about, that block to the left of the stairs to the police station, is that to get wheelchairs from the ramp across to the police station?
Right, so that isn't fully designed, but it's sort of a placeholder to say that there'll be a connection between the main platform in front of the main entrance,
Mhm.
and then a platform extended to the
Stairs.
police door in that,
Well,
in this platform.
So that's a great thing to do, but how will that visually be covered so that we're not just staring at a concrete block?
Right, so new bushes would be planted in front of that.
Okay.
So the bushes that are there now are quite overgrown. And they're
Yes,
Yeah.
sort of, they're too large.
yeah.
They need trimming back.
So that's just another point, yeah. I like the way that it incorporated the whole plan with the war memorial, and everything is integrated, which is a big thing for me in terms of context, so I think they did a great job with that. So I would think that just with those general comments that you've just heard, moving to a next step
Keep
seems to make
proceeding.
sense, yeah.
Okay.
Everybody good with that?
Mhm.
Okay, good. Item 3, rental housing certificate program, certification program concept. Greg, do you want to tee this up for us and we'll have a discussion?
Right, so currently, the process for renters who may have a concern about a rental unit, it's more of a reactive approach. And for the most part, it has worked. There have been a few concerns. We don't have a tremendous amount of rental properties out there, but obviously we have some. And so, Lauren Causland came up with an example from another community that she wanted you to consider, and that's a rental housing certification program. So it's a more proactive approach, so it's certifying units for rent ahead of time, following basically the same guidelines that are out there. It's not a whole lot of new guidelines, but it's just putting them up front in the certification program. So it's one of the communities that has done that is Provincetown. They have a very large rental business, much larger than we have. But nonetheless, it's something that attorneys from Copeland and Page, they have developed that with Provincetown. They feel that it has been fairly successful there. So it's something that you may want to consider down the road as you think about the longer term issue of rentals. So right now, the only proactive measures that we really take are geared towards the transient, yes, the short term, the under 6 days. Where we do have a pretty modest certification program for that. We make sure that the fire safety measures are in place, that if it's on a septic system, the septic system can handle it, that sort of thing, egresses, etc. But that doesn't apply to other rentals. So it's something I think Lori wanted to bring to your attention and for something for you to consider.
Yep. Okay, good, thank you. Any thoughts, comments?
Can you remind me what the percentage of renters is? I thought it was a relatively high number down, like, the number that I was recalling was 30%. Is that inaccurate?
Well, so you're talking about private homes that are being rented?
Yeah,
As
would
well.
this not apply to that?
It can, yes, it can.
30% of homes or 30% of residents?
Rentals, period.
Total
I
properties?
wasn't clear that this was distinguished between rental of a home or rental of a,
So Provincetown applies it to rentals of homes as well.
yeah. So then my thinking on that was the impact of this would be pretty massive. And we should not undertake it lightly. This would require some pretty significant socializing if it was going to impact rental homes as well.
Right.
No small thing.
Any other comments?
I'm in agreement with Eli and think if it's even something that's gonna be entertained, a fair amount of work, conversations, group sessions would need to be
Yeah.
had with a lot of people.
Well, I can speak from the short-term paying guest process that took us almost 9 months
Right.
to get through for that
Right.
short period of time. My general question is how many, in relative to the number of properties that we have and actual concerns and complaints or questions that we get, how many do we get in a year, on a couple year basis or whatever, in terms of things that this would address that?
So we're getting a couple complaints a year,
Okay, so maybe 2 or 3?
2 or 3, less than a
Okay.
handful.
So we're really solving for a very small number of complaints that we currently have.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that's another scope issue in terms of what we're trying to think about there. And how is the current complaints are handled by the Board of Health?
Right, so
And-
someone can file a complaint,
Yeah.
and then we send out a housing inspector
Mhm.
to follow up on that complaint.
So the infrastructure is there for that complaint system to happen anyway?
Yes,
And it's just now, that's more of a input versus it just being a certification up front.
right.
In other words,
Like
an
I said, It's a
event-driven.
reactive
Right,
process.
event-driven.
Rather than a sort of proactive certification,
Mhm.
exactly.
Okay. Arthur, do you have any thoughts?
No.
So I think the real question here is whether it's something we want to pursue and have it looked at. Is there any further information that we want to get in terms of thinking about it? Or what's the general consensus of the group?
I personally feel that I don't think I don't think there's issues that rise enough to the occasion of putting additional regulations into place
Mhm.
on rental properties.
Considering what I think is the potential impact of this, I think I agree with Muffin.
Okay.
If there's anything to be done, it needs to be some better communication to renters of what their resources are in town if they have issues. But I think trying to impose this kind of a structure in this town would be, right now, would be a pretty huge effort to socialize that. I'm not jumping up and down to undertake that soon.
I think like with most things like this, that procedurally, I think this should come up through the department and be a recommendation of the department if it matches what they view as being a problem in town. So I just don't feel like we're in a position to vote on something like this without it being something that the town department has weighed in
That's
on,
true.
because
I
the
know.
town department is frankly a lot more knowledgeable on this topic than I am.
Yeah,
If-
okay.
If they feel like it's an issue, and this is an answer to the issue, then I think it totally warrants looking at it, but I think for us just to evaluate this on our own without any subject matter expert from the town is very difficult.
Yeah, no, at most, you would ask for that more in-depth review.
So if the building inspector in particular feels like this is an issue and wants to come back and report on this being an issue and this being a way to address it, that's great. But on its own, I feel like it's completely out of context.
Okay.
Lori Clausen, if I could just add, I think it's a good point to say how many complaints to the building inspector or board of health have been made, but another population would be the children. And I think if you have children living in an apartment where maybe their parents start to have conflict with the landlord, or there's bad conditions in the apartment, that can affect their learning and their attitude about life. And it would be interesting to work more with the school department. You know, do you have behavioral issues that you think are related to where some of the kids live in Manchester? Because if you're 6 and there's ice on the windows behind you as you sleep in your bed, and it gives you a headache because they're old 50-year-old windows and they form ice on the inside, that child won't do very well in school. So they need more resources at school potentially. So that's kind of immeasurable unless you're looking for what is the effect on some of the kids that are in the apartments. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, well, I'm getting the consensus, and I think one of my larger pieces, even if this did go forward, I always think about enforcement and staff needed and, you know, extra pieces of that. And generally, for what we're solving for relative to a small number right now, and to Arthur's point about it not necessarily being generated up through an issue that has been brought forward by the town departments that we sort of govern and give the care and feeding of these things to, I would say that unless the Board of Health or any of the other town departments feel that it's worth moving forward with looking at this, we would certainly recommend, or would look to their recommendation on any thoughts that they have. But from a Board of Selectmen perspective at this point, I think the consensus is that we're not really interested in moving forward with anything further at this point, unless that happens. But thank you for bringing it up.
Sure.
Okay, point 4. Water Department review, the billing changes for the Phillies. Do you want to come up and chat with us for a bit? Arthur, do you want to, Arthur, I meant to say Greg.
I'll do it.
Do you want to do it?
Whatever it is.
You'll do it? You'll do it?
Careful.
No, be careful. Hello.
Hello.
We have the Phillies family, so, thank you. You want to just set the
Sure,
context
sure.
and then we'll have you folks speak to us?
So, with the introduction of the tiered billing system for water rates, the higher volume users have a higher rate for the volume that's over the various tiers. So in the case of an apartment building that only has one water meter feeding multiple units, you're getting a high volume and therefore kicking into that higher tier. If there were individual units, meters for those individual units, the billing would be lower. So in the case of the Felix apartments, the question becomes the expense of adding those individual meters to stay within those lower rates. That's a high expense, so the request from the landowners is to be able to have a waiver from that requirement of individual meters.
Okay, good.
Well, years ago, when, it was that long ago, when I think Bob Maroney was actually the town engineer, but when we first started having the tiered water rates, I realized then that we were going to be paying more because we do have 1 meter for 7 units, 1 meter for 9 units, and 1 meter for 8 units. So we're really serving 24 families, but it's with 3 meters. And the software that the town uses doesn't have the capability of dividing up the usage based on each family. So I prepared a spreadsheet that would show the difference in the billing. If you were to divide it up per unit, it would drop down to the lower rate, and we would save approximately, well, a little over $2,000 a quarter. Of course, each quarter each billing cycle, sometimes the water usage varies. So, that was based, I think, on the last billing cycle or the cycle in the fall, which isn't our highest use. Summer is our highest use. So that's, it's over $8,000 a year that we're paying just because the apartments aren't separately metered. And I talked to the housing authority today, and I just, if our apartments were Section 8 or subsidized or affordable, however you want to categorize them, a 2-bedroom apartment in our district would be valued at $2,194 a month. We're charging $1,500 a month for our 2-bedroom apartments, so we're significantly below market. And most of the families we have are, doing their best to pay. And when we go up, there's always, concern about our increases. So the expenses keep going up. We're limited on how much we can go up on our rent, so I'm just looking for other ways to save money. And this is a sizable number that we can save if the town were willing to divide up the water bills on a per unit basis. And if the usage goes above the base rate, then so be it. But at least it's not we're not being charged every gallon at one of the highest rates. And we did get a proposal from Milne Plumbing to see what it would cost. Can you speak to that?
Well, and it was basically, it's a really difficult situation because the buildings are all built. Every one of these units, the plumbing runs through the center of the building and it's divided up as it goes along. So his proposal was around $90,000 for separate water heaters. That didn't include the water meters, which is probably another $400 or $500 per piece for times 24 or times 27, because we do have laundries as well. And
what that doesn't include the water tanks.
Right.
It doesn't include the carpentry to install a water tank in each apartment.
To access everything.
Right.
Yeah, and as well, for the most part, most of these units have back-to-back plumbing, so we would have to basically demolish one bathroom to get into the plumbing, to separate the plumbing from, because it goes up and it feeds two. There's no really easy way of doing that. So it's very extensive and would cost a ton of money to do that.
I mean, we recently did spend almost $200,000 putting in separate heating units, natural gas heating units, again, because they were more high efficiency and more economical, because the tenants do pay their own their own heat. But we pay for all the water, we pay for all the hot water, because we own the water tanks and the gas that heats the water in the water tank. So all the hot water that goes to all the apartments and all the water in general, we pay for. Because as a landlord, you're not allowed to charge a tenant for anything unless it's separately metered.
Right.
So, yeah, so.
So we're looking for some relief.
I hear
I
you.
realize that.
Okay. Board members, any questions, comments?
Is it just these 3 properties, or are there other properties that are affected by this?
For us, it's just these 3 buildings on Desmond Avenue.
Are there other properties in town where this is the case?
No, I don't think so.
I'm not aware of others. We haven't gotten requests from
Is this
others.
a very similar situation to Summer Street? Relatively similar?
Same principle.
Yeah.
So the Summer Hill was with the irrigation.
Yeah,
So that was a seasonal use.
And to the software point of what we have from a town perspective, there's no upgrades or anything to our software systems that would alleviate this problem.
Well, so that software is tied into the meters.
Yeah,
So that's the whole issue. It's
Right.
based off of.
so you
whatever
can't, no
meter.
matter what happens.
Right.
Okay,
That's the
I'm
problem.
happy to share my spreadsheet.
okay. So in terms of,
That's
so,
exactly what we have with Summer Hill people do.
right.
Right.
So from to solve this, if we were going to look at this, it would have to be a manual method
Yes.
based on our staff to do that. Okay.
But this is the only property, or the only 3 properties that we're aware of. So it's not like,
Yeah,
it's not like opening a Pandora's box of other
I'm
cases.
not worried about a deluge of requests.
Right.
There may be a couple more out there I'm not aware of, but,
Well, because I just, it's cost prohibitive to,
yeah, you
for
can't.
the property owners to try to,
Take forever to fix it.
to try to mitigate
Yeah.
the issues of creating separate meters. That's just,
And it didn't seem like this, the rule wasn't a tax on
yeah, they weren't built.
low-income people. It was
they-
really basically to
Right.
keep low-end users from
Right.
using extra water.
Right, so I feel like we gotta figure out a logical way on both sides here
To make it, figure it out.
yeah, to figure it out, because I just think, like I say, you expect it would be expensive to try to shift now into 2019 with buildings that were built however long ago, but it's just.
Well, and
cost
it's
prohibitive.
expensive, it's also extremely disruptive,
Well,
right,
yeah,
to the
I mean,
families and
You wouldn't even.
everything.
Well, we
To
were
an
able
extent,
to
couldn't
do the
even stay
heatings
there. We
over
wouldn't
the
do it.
summer, so it didn't
Right.
affect anybody when we switched over all to all the high efficiency
Right.
natural gas heaters. But water, you use 365 days a year, so it's not like you have a season where you can
No,
conveniently
Yeah,
right.
do it.
renovate.
Eli?
Yeah, I'm sensitive to the request too. The objective or the anticipation of the change that we made to the rate tiers was that for some cases, if people could put in new meters, it would be a reasonable thing to do, but clearly the cost of this is pretty disproportionate. So I do think it's worth considering doing a waiver here.
Yeah,
I suspect the mechanics of that would be similar to what we did at Summer Hill. Do we want to pursue that tonight, or work out the details of that after talking to DPW?
well, I'd like to hear, so I think the inclination for me and what I'm hearing, I agree that the cost prohibits really looking at this as a single meter shift. I think you raised a good point. You've been here twice talking about this issue. I think we should pursue and find out from a DPW perspective in terms of the effort, the cost, and what it would be to do that for our staff and what that means. But I'm inclined to say as well, this is a unique situation, similar to a Summer Hill place where we don't have a lot of these here. I don't know if any more are going to be coming our way, but I think there's some ways to kind of grandfather things that have been in existence for a number of years that make sense to see what we can do on it. So I wouldn't want to take action on approving it without necessarily understanding and hearing from the DPW, but to give direction to them to help us sort out what this means and how it could be accommodated. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah? Does that work? Okay, good. All right, do we have any other comments on that? You guys all set?
No.
Okay.
With Summer Hill, I would say that when we did put in the waiver, we had to add the proviso that it was an informal agreement because we can't bind future boards.
Right.
But I don't anticipate if we did that, any future board stepping in and saying, oh no, we're gonna reverse that.
Yeah,
Just wanted to be clear on this from just an informal agreement, but probably you can count on it.
yeah, okay, good. Does this have to do with the water?
Yeah, it does. An idea is to put water efficient shower heads, dishwashers, and better washing machines that use less water. That might be expensive initially, but it saves water.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, so we'll follow up with the DPW and certainly bring you back in the loop, but thank you for all the work in bringing it forward.
Sure.
Okay, thanks. All right, Coastal Stream Team, is Deb here? There she is, come on up. So, thank you for coming, and thank you for your willingness to step forward to be on the stream team. Jessica Lamotte certainly positions and supports you. She sent us a note about that as well. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your interests. We've certainly read what you've written, but if you can just give us a sense of what that
Well,
Is
I've
that
been
right?
working with the stream team for about a year now and really enjoy working with them. And would like to continue, and I also am interested in serving my community and learning more about how things get done locally. And I have a long-standing interest in the environment.
Good.
Works for me.
I know. It's nice to have that happen. Any questions or comments for Deb?
No, just
No.
thank you for being
And
willing
you've-
to continue.
Right, and you've been there long, you know what the requirements are and being part of that and how that all works. Okay, great, good. All right, any other comments? No? I'll take a motion.
No, I've read the resume.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
I'll make a motion to appoint Deb Frazee to the Manchester Coastal Stream Team.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Thank you.
Welcome, thank you.
Easiest thing
Take care,
tonight.
Deb. Okay, we have a consent agenda for the Cub Scout Pack 30 Singing Beach overnight and the signature for the Adele Quincy Irvin Citizenship Award.
Make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed, good.
Who's, I can do
The 30th, May 30th is the Citizenship Award.
You can do it. Who's gonna do it?
I may be away.
Okay. Do you want to just do it, Eli? Okay. So Eli will represent the district, or the district, will go to the district, represent the town, and we'll sign this. This is a secret now in terms of who won it, but we'll keep that going. Okay.
Yeah, I'm away.
Yeah, okay. So Eli, you got that. Thank you. All right, correspondence. A letter from the First Parish Church, Comcast annual report, letter from Arbor Day Foundation, and letter from Loomis Nahadas regarding complete streets. Any comments or anything on that?
No, we had the hiccup on Good Friday.
Yeah, have we responded formally to them?
Not formally.
Okay, I'd like to,
Not in writing.
Okay.
Chuck certainly was in touch with them.
Yeah.
Right, right.
I think we should, based
But no,
on,
it's-
yeah, exactly. So based on the letter from the executive committee
Right.
of the First Parish Church, I'd like a formal letter to go back, obviously recognizing our apologies for that, understanding that things were underway and that, you know, in the future, certainly if anything impacts that area, we'll let them know. And just as a general point of correspondence, particularly with Bob Coyne's question today, if there are follow-up items or things that should go on the agenda, now I know that will be covered in part of the minutes and everything else, but anything that we need to just have a heads up on, that we make sure that we get back to people so they know that we've acknowledged it and, you know, beyond the minutes, I guess, if it's, particularly if they've written a few letters, that would be great. All right, anything else?
No.
Okay.
Say what that letter was about.
The Bob Coyne letter?
No,
Which,
the complete streets letter.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
oh, the one from Loomis and Nahadas?
Did you skip it? I'm sorry.
No, we just,
No,
it's just, we just listed in
correspondence.
correspondence, yeah, that's all. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it's in the record, so we can get it to you. Okay. Town administrators report?
So a few things. First, in the packet also was a letter from the assessors just confirming what we had hoped for in terms of our budget development, and that is they can release $125,000 in what's called the overlay account. So the overlay account is set up each year to cover any tax abatements or successful abatement requests on real estate. So that pot grows typically over time, and every year we pull back money out of that hasn't been spent. So that's just a formal notification that they agree with the $125,000. So construction update, things are getting busier. So they've been working on School Street with the sidewalk this week. They'll be doing some paving on School Street starting next week, primarily from Flatley down to Sawmill Brook, the crossing, that stretch, primarily where they had dug up last fall with the drainage. They'll also be paving next week on Ocean Street on the eastern end where again, last fall, they had put in new water mains. So that'll be underway also next week. The new piles for the new dock, the new floats at Reed Park, that work is getting underway. And also the revetment work, repairing the revetment on Singing Beach. That is actually got underway today. And that'll take all of May, basically. Hoping that'll get done before Memorial Weekend. They may still have a small section to complete after Memorial that'll be on the
And
western
then-
side. So all that activity is happening now. So tomorrow afternoon, or at noon, we have a staff lunch, some training and some updates on health insurance. All of you are invited to attend if it works for your schedule. And we'll be also having employees complete a satisfaction survey and take what we derive from that as a way to make some improvements. So that's happening. Elections coming up, 3 more weeks, 21st of May. Not only are there the town officers being voted, but we also have the 2 capital exclusion votes, one for the new ambulance and one for additional drainage work. The planning board has been talking about forming a study group looking at what's called 40R developments. 40R refers to state law that allows for mixed-use developments, special zoning for mixed uses with a focus on residential. And the carrot that the state offers is that if you develop 40R districts and new housing comes in, that new housing, the state will contribute towards the education expense. It's a complicated formula, but nonetheless, there's an opportunity there. As part of that, if part of the formation of the study group, if there's 1 or 2 of you who would be interested in serving on that, I think that would be beneficial. So you can think about that and let me or somebody know.
We should just speak to Becky about it as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mentioned a solution perhaps to the flags there. If that makes sense to you, then we can proceed with that. I know that, Eli, you were thinking of a more detailed policy. But
Yeah, so I'm a little concerned about making something like this a permanent change.
I mean, it can be a practice for now.
Yes. Very well could be a practice.
Yeah, it could be. As soon as we turn it into a practice, it's pretty much a done deal. It's going to be a very strange thing to go and change that practice.
So is this worth having an agenda item for a discussion about this?
I think that was originally the idea, is to put in place a short policy discussion.
Well, seeing that we said we were going to do that, we probably should, but I think that the recommendation should be part of that as a point of what we discussed. So let's just put it on for next time. And
What department owns this?
I don't think there
It's not
is
a
one.
We
department.
don't have one.
It's the flagpole department.
Is it DPW? Of course, there's no flagpole department, but as a procedural thing.
Procedures for police.
Yeah,
The
please.
police put it up every morning and
Procedurally,
take
as a
it
practice,
down.
we've been trying to have items that are brought to the board have some sort of ownership, so that we're not just responding to
General request.
general requests. We will respond to it, but again, this one's unusual, but in principle, we're not necessarily subject matter experts in the majority of things that come up, so.
Well,
Right, so I did reach out to.
I'm not applying it to flags. Flags is, it's
Right.
not that conceptually hard to understand a flag, but as a matter of procedure, I think we've been talking about trying to have this brought up through a department, just as a practice. So,
well, so the department is probably the Board of Selectmen office, right?
Okay.
The police put it up and down, but
Yeah.
if there's a department, it's probably, or, to Greg's point, he's had a conversation with the veterans agent. So what was his thoughts?
So he encouraged us to like many communities, to fly the two, the American flag and the military flag.
Right.
And he left it up to us in terms of commemoration or special event flags.
Got it.
But his recommendation certainly is, he would encourage us to do the American flag and the military flag.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with this recommendation. I think it's a sort of straightforward way to do it, but I'm happy to defer if people want to have a further discussion about it, that's fine. So we'll just put it on the agenda
On the next agenda.
for the next agenda, and we'll have a discussion like we said we were going to. Okay.
I think we help with this, again, one of these line, taking some, I just think we need the problem defined. I'm personally not clear on what problem we're solving,
Right.
so
Well, it's a
I have nothing against
request.
flags, I love flags. But
Yeah.
what are we solving for?
Yeah.
So let's just be very explicit on what problem we're addressing,
Mhm.
so that we're not just making changes in abstract.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I think that's it.
And if
for
I
the-
said just schedule, so we do
Yeah.
have some conflicts with the June dates. We had talked about shifting to the 2nd and 4th.
Uh-huh.
Those are the planning board dates, and they have hearings that
Oh.
they really need a bigger meeting on.
Got it.
So it's a little problematic in terms of where we would meet.
Well, you mean the 3rd and the,
So the 3rd and the 17th are your normal
right.
meeting
They're
days.
moving
That
into the
was-
10th and the,
Oh, so then we were moving to the, I'm sorry, I must have missed one.
Right, so we had
So then
talked
we
about-
moved to the 10th, got it, no, I remember, and so the planning board needs this space.
Why is it going up?
Yeah, I mean, it's
We
not
can go-
it's not the ideal space, but I don't think we need to move a meeting
for the space.
because of the space. I think we could probably, Eli, what do you think, meet in the other room?
And that was available at 7?
Right, we would just switch with them. Is it capable, the Comcast, or, I'm sorry?
Well, it's the portable.
Yeah, with
It's
the
the
portable.
portable,
Okay,
yeah.
so they're capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
so we'll
I
keep
just
that.
assumed stick with the dates that we had come up with for June.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And just
versus
meet in the
changing
other
anything.
space, yeah.
That's fine.
Yep.
Okay. All right, well, with that said, we are going to adjourn to go into two executive sessions. The first one is regarding possible real estate transactions. The second one is contract negotiations. They will be held separately, but we're not going to return to open session. So I'll take a motion to adjourn for this meeting, to go into executive session for the possible real estate transaction, and then subsequent the contract negotiations, not to return to open session.
So moved.
Yeah. My second one?
Yes, yes,
You're-
yes.
Yes.
Verbally
Right.
saying.
Verbally,
aye.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
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 Okay, thank you. So we're going into executive session. We have some guests with our FinCom here, and Nancy Hammond to talk about this, and other than that, we're done. Thank you.